Hey, and welcome to another episode of Escaping Shadows. Today, we're going to travel back in time. We're going to go to the 50s. We're going to stop in the 60s. And we're going to end in the 80s. I'm going to talk about how did I come about? Who made me? Where did they come from? What's their story? Maybe you'll hear something and you'll be able to help me fill some holes that have been left open for many, many years. Not just for myself, but others in my life. I don't know. We'll see. For now, I invite you to grab your drink, grab a snack, put on those comfy clothes, and let's hang out. All right? Let's do this. We are going to start this in Greene County, New York. Located in Greene County, New York, there is a small town named Catskill. Catskill sits near the Hudson River. Catskill is a little town that became a settling spot for Jewish families. These Jewish families were looking to get away from the New York City heat and settle someplace where they could not have to worry so much. So they chose Catskill and the surrounding little towns. Catskill at one point had a attraction called Carson City. From what I have looked up about it, it looked very similar to just kind of like a theme park, but maybe without the rides. I don't know a whole lot about the area. I've only been to certain portions of it. What I have seen, it's absolutely beautiful. I wanted to move there at one time. It's just not a bunch of cornfields and flat land. It's beautiful. So why am I talking about a small town in New York? Oh, what? What are you doing, AJ? That's because on September 4th of 1955, Alberta and Barry Bush Sr. welcomed their son, Barry Bush Jr. Barry Bush was one of 4 of Alberta and Barry Sr.'s children. They had 2 sons and 2 daughters. Their son, Barry Bush Jr., was my father. Don't know a whole lot about my father's life pre-Illinois. Not many people do. He was very secretive about a lot of his life. I've heard had troubles, legal troubles. I've heard that he left New York to join the carnival. I heard that he left New York with a friend. I've heard all sorts of things. One thing I do know is that my father liked anything with a motor. He liked motorcycles and he liked going fast.
Go fast. Anybody. I want to go fast.
From my understanding, my father left New York in 1977. When he left New York, again, the circumstances are all over the place because he would tell somebody one thing and say another thing to somebody else, and nobody really got a full story, I guess. But he left New York in 77, and he made his way down to Florida. Nobody knows where in Florida, how long he was in Florida. None of the details, because once he got to Florida, he seemed to have cut off communication with everybody. The last place anybody knew him being was in Florida, but and nobody has ever told me a location in Florida. He was on a beach and he was partaking in a lot of illegal substances and living his best life. Nobody really knows where he went, how long he was there. There's just been stories passed on of things he has said and what other family has said and so on. There is a story that he made his way up to Tennessee from Florida at whatever time it was that he left Florida and broke down somewhere in Tennessee. But there's also been he was with a friend that he left New York with, and then he wasn't with a friend that he left New York with, and he never left New York with a friend. There's so many gaps, but he left Florida and he made his way up to Tennessee, is what has been told. And then his vehicle broke down. And nobody knows how long he was in Tennessee, where he was in Tennessee. Same with Florida. Nobody knows if he stopped in Georgia or Kentucky or anything, just that he went to Tennessee. He went from Florida to Tennessee. There's a few spots in between Florida and Tennessee, so I find it hard to believe that he just went from Florida to Tennessee, but I could be wrong. So while he was in Tennessee, because his vehicle broke down, he had to work to get a new vehicle so that he can continue his traveling, but nobody knew where he was going. He was kind of like the wandering man. Not wandering. Wandering. He was just a free spirit, I guess. Just going wherever the wind took him. During all of this, because we did find out that he had made his way to Illinois around 1982. So during his traveling in Illinois, in Richland County, Illinois, in the small town of the White Squirrels. Yes, you heard me correctly. The White Squirrels. That's what our town was known for, is known for. It is known for the White Squirrels. You're going to see pictures of them now. Yep. They're adorable. No, really. They kind of are. They're kind of cute. They're kind of cute. They just have really creepy red eyes because they're albino squirrels. But on October 14th of 1965, Pat Johnson gave birth to a little girl whose name was Mary Jane. Mary Jane is my mom. She was born in Olney, Illinois. My mom is one of 5. So my mom is one of 6 children. My grandma had 3 boys and 3 girls. Yes, 6. Whew. Yes, my mom was one of 6. In Olney, in the 60s, looked to be rather interesting from the research that I've done. There was a lot that I learned about my town that I didn't know. Back in the 60s, there was a train derailment. There was also a warehouse for alcohol or a brewery. I didn't know this. There was also a Coca-Cola plant, I think is what my mother said. So much is different now. But back in 65, there was a B&O derailment. And during this derailment, the train had lost a bunch of stereo equipment, clothing, and whiskey. And based on the articles that I read, it said that's okay though. The citizens of the county were able to clean it all up. So I'm pretty sure that's theft, but they made sure it got taken care of. It looked pretty bad. I'm gonna show you pictures if I haven't already. Show you pictures that I could find online of the derailment. So from then, my mom, which you've seen pictures of right now because I'm going to incorporate them. My mom was just this cute little thing living small town life in Olney, Illinois. And like I said, my dad had made it to Olney, or at least Illinois, in 82. We only know this because of talking to people that we knew were a part of his life and piecing things together and putting dates together. And it's been a very interesting process. We've been piecing together a lot of information that until recently we did not know. And that's because I wanted to provide as much as I could for this so that you guys had a better look at my life. So in the 80s, the 80s, my mom was a teenager, and of course I said she was one of 6. They lived across the road from this gas station. It was called a Clark's gas station. And my dad actually worked at this gas station. I asked my mom, how did they meet? And she said that her older brother had actually gone into the gas station and he was getting chewing tobacco. And my dad was working and asked my uncle if he could ask his daughter on a date. And my uncle was just baffled. And he said, well, that's not my daughter. That's my sister. And I don't care. And so he went back across the road and told my mom, hey, apparently you're my daughter now, and that guy over there wants to ask you on a date. Well, at the time, my mom was in a relationship on again, off again with another person. And it took her about 2 weeks. And then she finally agreed to go with my dad on a date. And I asked her, what was it that you guys did on your date? And she said they went cruising down Main Street. If you're from small town anywhere, I don't know if this is just an Illinois thing. Apparently not, because Fast Times at Ridgemont High kind of touched base on this also. So, small towns, back in the day, you just cruised. What is cruising? Driving from one spot to another spot down Main Street. I can't really say anything because when I was a teenager, we did the same thing, except our cruise route was different. Back when my mom was a teenager, they cruised I'll have to get a map and show if I can find a map of Main Street and pop it in here. Because my cruise route was, I think, bigger than theirs and probably better. But she said on their first date, They just went out to eat and they went cruising. I mean, I guess that's a pretty grand first date. My first date with my husband was sitting in my living room on two separate sitting in my living room on two separate couches really far away from each other because I was afraid to be too close to him. So anyways, I asked my mom what were some of the things that they enjoyed doing when they were dating. And she said that one of their favorite things to do was to go drag racing. Again, what? So they would also go to Lake, Richland County, Olney in particular, has a really big lake. Probably not as big as some other places out there, but for us and in our area, it's a big lake. You can, during the warm months, you can see so many boats out there, and they do big bass tournaments and stuff like that. But the lake was one of my favorite memories as a kid. I hope to one day get my kids to where we're constantly at the lake. But they would go to the swimming area at one of the lakes because there's 3. The swimming area is still there, by the way. But she said they would just go there, they'd hang out, they'd drink and swim, and that's what they did. That's what they enjoyed. I mean, sounds like a great time to me, minus the drinking, but sounds like a great time. So in talking with my mom about all of this, I realized that her and we had a lot more in common than what I realized as a kid growing up. I didn't realize that my mom enjoyed some of the same things I did growing up. I didn't realize that my mom went through a lot. And by doing this vlog, I'm learning more about my mom. And I hope that you guys get to too, because I'm hoping to do a live with her and you guys can ask her questions. So, upon digging through everything, I also asked my mom, okay, how did my dad propose to you? And she said, well, he just asked when we were sitting in the car up on Main Street. And I said, sounds about right. Based off of everything that I have heard about the man, sounds about right. So in January of 85, they got married. They had a small little wedding that was in the house of the preacher who married them. It was just him, I think she said his wife, my mom, my dad, and my godparents that were there. They got married in his living room. I asked my mom, was there no family in attendance? And she said, no, it was just our friends. And so I asked, well, because curiosity, was the family okay with you guys getting married? And my mom said, yeah, they were fine with it. I had concerns because my mom was so young. And my dad, obviously, if you put numbers together, he was quite a bit older than my mom. But based off of what I've heard over all of the years, my family really loved my dad. A lot of people did. I've heard about how great of a man he was. I asked my mom, what was your married life like? Because again, my mom was young. My dad was 10 years older than her. I was curious, like, what did married life look for them? And she said that their married life was just like any other married life. There was a lot of ups and downs. And my dad was a diabetic who didn't manage his diabetes the best. So she said that caused a big strain in their marriage, that when he wasn't managing it like he was supposed to, his sugar would get out of whack and it would cause him to do things or be sick. So that caused a strain. So 1985, they get married in January. September, I come. Born and raised in Olney. I am one of 4 of my mom's children. I'm the oldest of my mom's children. I have a couple brothers. I have a sister. I have a stepsister with my stepdad. September of 1985, I come to the world. Look at my cute pictures in there. So I asked Mom, what was life like after me? She said we did normal family things. We would go to my grandma's every Sunday for dinner with the entire family. We would just hang out and do normal family things. My dad worked. He was a mechanic in a garage. She even said that a car fell on him at one time. And my mom was a custodian at the local college, community college. She said it was fairly normal, like a normal family life. They just did normal things that you do in the 80s. I don't know what people did in the 80s because I was a baby. We're going to fast forward to August 27th of 1987. My dad was 31. My mom was 21. My dad was just a week away from turning 32. I was a couple weeks away from turning 2. That morning, my mom, my dad, and myself, we went and ran some errands. I had found in his belongings that I have a receipt from where he had paid his car insurance that day. And I asked my mom, what was that day like? And she said, well, it was just going and running errands. And then my dad apparently had lost his license at some point, and he wasn't supposed to be driving, and he had driven down Main Street, I think she said, and an officer drove by, saw my dad, pulled him over, and took him to jail. And so my mom had to go bail him out, and she had taken me and him home, and she proceeded to get ready for work. And she said that we didn't live too far away from the college at this point, so she would just walk to work. And she went to work. She wasn't there very long, and she got a phone call. And the phone call was letting her know that my aunt and uncle had come over to give my dad some crap about getting arrested earlier that day. And when they walked into the house, they found me just wandering around, and they were looking for my dad, and they ended up having to kick the door in on the bathroom because he had passed away. My dad was 31, and because he had not managed his diabetes very well throughout his life, he ended up passing away from a massive heart attack. I asked my mom what was life like being a widow at 21 and having a toddler. And she said she would never wish it on anybody, that it was hard, but we made it. She had a lot of support from my uncle, which I'll throw a couple pictures of him in here. He was a big part of my life, and we're going to talk about him later on. But my family, they stepped up and helped her a lot. She said she ended up going back to work, but she didn't go back to the college. She ended up finding another job, and she said we survived. She acknowledged that she had a young child, and she had to do whatever she could. So she did. We stayed with family for a little bit, and then we did it. I asked her what her fondest memory with my dad was, and she said, oh, you're not gonna like it. And I said, no, what was your fondest memory? And she said, drag racing on the weekends.
See me for Desuko.
So I asked, because I find this incredibly insane, but I asked, what was so exhilarating about this? What did you win? And she said, bragging rights. Okay. She said they would all just go up on Main Street in their cars, and then somebody would pull up and say, hey, you want to race? And then they'd go out to one of the long stretches of roads, and you'd count 3 poles, I think is what she said. And whoever made it to the last pole, they won. And then the herd would just go back to Main Street and do it again. It's just, yeah, it's so ridiculous to me. It's so ridiculous. I get it. I get it. Times were so different back then. You didn't, that, I don't know. I don't know. As you can see, there's a lot of holes in my life as far as my dad goes, because I don't know a lot about his life before Illinois. I only know bits and pieces of what people have told me over the years, and there hasn't been a whole lot of that. I was given a box, what I was given of his belongings, because from what I've gathered, he never really kept anything. I've got a few pictures of my family from New York, and I think those were given after he passed away. I've got his wallet, which, speaking of, so his wallet, I have looked at this wallet numerous times over my life, and a few weeks ago I decided I'm going to dig through it again and see if there's something I missed. I did. As I was going through it, I found a picture of a baby, and I was asking my mom, who are these people? And there was one that she didn't know, and she was telling me about my sister. That's for the next video. And now there's even more questions because dates and photos and just, but there's some things that you can't just come out and say, hey, can you answer this for me? That's something that's been very, very big with all of this, is that those that were a part of his life, they don't like to give any information, and it just makes no sense to me. I even told my mom that he's gone. Why are people hiding things that could help me when he's not here? He's not gonna be mad that you're telling me things about his life, because I've gone 40 years and I don't know anything. So I asked my mom if she had any advice for anybody that is either going through this or has gone through it or could potentially go through it in the future, being a young widow or getting hit with a lot of information that you didn't know. Your whole idea of who somebody was in your life, and then finding out pieces of them that aren't exactly what you had in your head all these years, and specifically for how to deal with being a widow at a young age with a child. And I'm reading this so I get this correct. She said, you have to remember that life goes on, that you have a child. Keep going, and always check on your spouse. Check on their health. I think that's one of my mom's biggest regrets, is that she feels like if she would have been more on top of his diabetes, that maybe he would have been here longer. But in reality, he was a grown man, and he knew he was dependent on his insulin, and he didn't do it. She was a 21-year-old with a 1-year-old. It wasn't just her responsibility, and I hope one day she'll realize that it wasn't her fault. It wasn't her fault at all. She'll see it eventually. That's how I got here. It's whole crazy beginning to this little series that we're going with where there's a lot of holes, and I have hopes that maybe somebody out there is going to see this and they'll see the pictures of him, or they'll hear the name and they'll be like, hey, I know that guy. I remember him from back in 1976 when he was in Tennessee, Kentucky, Florida, who knows? Virginia. I don't know. Maybe there's somebody out there who can help fill these holes and help answer some questions. Or maybe there's a sibling out there that I'm not aware of, or the suspicions that I have of other siblings being out there. Because there's this like feeling that's always been there my whole life, is that there's more of me. I don't want to spoil too much, but I know there's at least one more of me, at least. And this isn't just helping me, this is helping her, because she's in the same boat as I am, where we have so many questions and no one to ask them to. So maybe by doing this vlog for my children and to help other people, maybe, like I said in the first video that I put out, that maybe you guys can help me too. Maybe you can help me and my sister. Help us connect some dots. Find out if there are more of us out there. Help us learn about the man that we came from. We'll talk more about her in the next episode. That was a whole time in my life where I cried a lot. If you made it this far, I thank you for being here. If you haven't noticed, which I'm sure you have, things are different. So I am slowly piecing together the studio. There's some things I want to work with, like the lighting, because there's a shadow, working with the audio, and just a few things here and there that I want to change up. I think for the most part, other than the lighting issue, I appreciate all of you. And again, thank you for being here. And if you are just now stumbling upon this and you're like, what is this craziness? Who is this person? Hi, I'm AJ, and this is Escaping Shadows. This page, this channel, this channel is about my life, but not just about my life. It is a channel of me telling my stories in hopes that if there's anybody else out there who's going through similar things that I've ever gone through in my life, that maybe they'll watch my videos and they'll step back and realize that they're not in this alone. My hopes are to build a community, a very, very strong community of people who are just here to help others. Whether it be, hey, I'm having a bad day, or shit, I don't know how I'm going to wake up tomorrow. I want to have a community in which we all come together, remind everybody that you have a purpose here. You may not see it today, but you have a purpose. I want to be able to bring a smile to somebody's face, even if it's just by me being an idiot sometimes. Because, whew. So, if you haven't yet, hit the buttons. Let's go this way. The subscribe. The like. The little bell. I'm looking at my computer so that I can see where to put things in this area. Again, subscribe, like, and hit that little notification thing so that you can see whenever I post a video and you can come listen to my story. I wrap these up by reminding each and every one of you, you're gorgeous. You're important, and the world needs you. Don't ever let anybody tell you anything otherwise. Again, you're gorgeous. You're important, and the world needs you. Thank you for being here. See you in a couple weeks. Love you.